This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to our August meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I'm Gary Lader, Chair of the HCC, and I would like to introduce the commission. Jeffrey Long is our Historic Officer, Registered Architect. Chaz Patrick's not with us tonight, but we have Seth Cornish here. Tony Silvoy is not here with us tonight, nor Ken Lausch. Craig Evans, a resident of the district, Roger Hudak, resident of the district, Mike Simonson, Chief Building Inspector. And I will read to you a little bit about our ordinance information. It is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings in areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is that applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project and address and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. You're welcome, Ken. The board will then address the project. There will be public comment and ultimately a motion to approve the project as presented, or approve with modifications, or table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For any one from the public who would like to speak, we have a 3-minute time limit, and comments are limited to attributes of the building only. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. Anybody?
I don't know. John Callahan and Mike Carucci, friends of mine, old friends.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether I should recuse myself from that totally because that I really don't want to, because I like the project. But
okay.
Whatever the chair thinks.
Yeah, I would say unless there's a business reason, like you feel that your opinion would be skewed because of business relationships.
Yes, yeah, but we've been friends for years.
Yeah, so I personally, I don't think that would be enough reason.
Just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay. Okay, and I mentioned already I have a conflict with 306 South New Street, so Craig will take my place for that. We will have those who are here in person with us should come to the desk right in front of Darlene Heller, and I will ask everyone to sign in who can. There are several methods to expedite our monthly meetings, and they include there's a 45-minute time limit on new proposals for large projects. Also, upon a second visit to the commission for large-scale projects, the following will be required: an architectural plan with lot lines, setbacks, defined architectural features, all measurements including the amount of floors, foundations, walls, parapets, window sizes, and the like. Also, a complete set of elevations of the building with streetscapes, drawings showing the new structure and context with surrounding buildings. I know we have at least one project tonight, which is a new project of that scale. I would also like to remind anybody who is with us virtually, please mute yourself unless you are speaking, and please announce yourself with your name and address before speaking. And with that, we will go to our first applicant. If the applicant for 9 East 3rd Street is here, please come up front and announce yourself. Hello,
Hi, I'm Jamie.
Jamie.
Jamie
Okay.
Jack.
How you spell the last name? B-E-C-K?
Beck.
Okay, thank you.
David.
Okay. And Jeffrey, if you're ready to begin.
And Ms. Beck, for minutes purposes, how do you spell your first name, please?
Jaime.
Thank you. Agenda item number 19, East 3rd Street, Canacomb. Building description, period, style, and defining features. Darlene, oh, you already have image number 1. Thank you so much. I don't know if the commissioners should be able to see the images on the screen. This structure is a semi-detached, one-story commercial building with a flat roof and multiple storefronts. Architecturally defining features include a highly decorative glazed terracotta parapet to the upper portion, a stucco sign band, the strip below the terracotta where most of the signage exists, and classical pilasters separating each of the storefronts. The building dates from circa 1920 and is classical revival in style. The storefronts were renovated in the 1990s in the classical style by incorporating large-scale precast masonry units at the sidewalk level. It also has bronze frame glass storefronts and an exterior insulation and finish system, often referred to as EFIS, with stucco applied to the upper portions of the facade. Proposed alteration, it is proposed to install a wall sign and a window sign. That is what's on the agenda. However, I checked in with the applicant and they've revised that slightly. I'll clarify. The guideline citations used in my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 concerning new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction. That it will not destroy the original materials. The Bethlehem ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting, as well as the Historic Conservation Commission guidelines for signage. My evaluation, the certificate of appropriateness application indicates the applicant's intent to install signage at the existing sign band to reflect a new commercial tenant. So Darlene, if you would please put up the application itself. Okay. Yeah, there's several pages and I'll try to remember to scroll, but I think that's sufficient for now. Thank you. When speaking with the applicant, they subsequently clarified that the window signage and the transom and the entrance doors, as well as on the storefront at the left of the entrance, are not part of the application. They appear somewhat in the application. And Darlene, if you could now put up image number 2, please. So here you see a close-up of just that storefront. There is actual signage in the window. So even though they said this is not part of the application, that window signage is already there.
It's actually been removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The day before we had our last meeting, it wasn't. So that's when this was taken.
Yeah.
What about?
Advised to remove it.
Okay. What about the blade sign that's hanging from the bracket?
That is still up there.
Okay. We haven't seen that, and that wasn't part of this application. And Darlene, I'm sorry if you could now go back to the application, please. It says the proposed signage includes the company name Canacomb in serif lettering composed of 5-inch deep aluminum channel letters. And here you can see a detail on the left. And then the thing at the angle is not to say that the signage is angled, it's to show you it's 3-dimensional. The sides are to be in black and the fronts are polycarbonate with translucent vinyl coating in a quote lime green end quote color. There are 2 details that indicate all uppercase lettering. Here you see that all uppercase with serif. There's one detail that has a combination of both uppercase and lowercase. I think it's the detail that has the dimensions of each letter, etc. So clarification will be requested so we know which of the 2 you're proposing. The individual letters are to be flush mounted into the facade. There you see also all uppercase, and I think if you scroll one more up, here you see, yeah, if you very top here you see it's a combination upper and lowercase, and they're very different font, so it's the discrepancy in reference to what's requested. It says they're to be flush mounted into the facade using through bolts. The dimensions of the actual sign band, so where the sign is intended, is 32 inches tall by 217 inches wide. That's not provided by the applicant, but I found that on the previous tenant's application. The proposed letters measure 18 inches tall. Here we see 18 inches by 132.4 inches. Another detail says that they are to be 168 inches wide. So here again, we have two different things going on, and we'll just need clarification about which is intended. One detail also indicates that the signage is non-illuminated, but here on this detail, you see at the very top, it talks about illumination with front lit power supply, LED lights, all this kind of thing. So yet again, I'm getting a conflict within the application itself. According to our guidelines, internal illumination is not appropriate within the district. So maybe you read that later and we can talk about that. If illumination is desired, and we have approved gooseneck fixtures or a so-called halo effect where they're lit from inside but they reflect off the back, so there's no glow out the front, we do require that there are no conduits, raceways, transformers, junction boxes, anything visible on the facade. So if there's illumination, that all has to happen from the interior. So in conclusion, the signage is appropriate with following modifications. One, Darlene, if we could go back to the close-up image of just the, I think their own image. It's a little, yeah, I'm sorry. It's a little hard to see, but there's scarring in the sign band from the previous sign. I don't know if the owner's not here. But it would be useful to have those things repaired before you put your sign up. We can't require it, but I'm recommending that.
Talking about what you could see where the last sign was.
The
put.
8 holes in the facade
Yeah.
being made with the last sign, the owner didn't repair those yet. It's
Yeah.
at least when I was there last.
Oh, it's still there.
The applicant is encouraged to install the letters onto a rigid backer board rather than individuals. We do allow individual lettering, but oftentimes on a brick facade where you can put them in the mortar joints. But as you see, the previous sign was just a board and it made 8 holes. This is going to make 80 holes, you know, if you do something like that. So if again, I can't require it, but we recommend on the backer board. Even that's going to create holes, but it'll create a limited number of holes. The backer should be ivory or warm white in color, and I think you'll see that at your neighboring tenants as well. And we do request a pinstripe detail that's offset around the border, and there are several of your neighbors have that detail already as well. In my opinion, the lettering is much too large for the sign band. I referenced the previous signage. At that time, we required the board itself to be limited to the dimension of the archway, so the opening of the archway. They took that dimension and that was the width of the sign. Right now, yours extends almost to the entire width of the whole sign band, at least on the one detail. Also, 5 inches thick for three-dimensional lettering is just way too deep. It's going to make it look a bit clunky, to be honest. We don't have guidelines that limit thicknesses, but a general rule is about 1 inch thick. But that also might depend on your illumination concept. I'm not really sure. But oftentimes when you get down to 1 inch thick, it's no longer the channel lettering, it's just a cutout made of a material. And those tend to be also more affordable than the channel lettering, to be honest. And we don't get into color schemes, but we do like historical colors. Lime green or neon colors are typically not for our district. It's hard to tell. It says just lime green. There might be a more subdued green. I know what you're referencing, obviously, from your product.
Right.
And again, it's an encouragement. I'm not requiring it. But if you look around, traditionally in the historic district, colors are natural color, things you see in nature. So that's just something to think about, potentially toning that neon green down a bit. And as I previously discussed, the storefront window signage, there's signs over the transom and the sign in the scroll bracket have not been assessed. So none of those are appropriate at this time, but our focus should be on the lettering above the entrance.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Well, Jamie, thank you for joining us. And Can you tell us more about the intention for lighting and, how you feel about the other comments?
We're open to all the comments. So there is going to be no lighting. It's not going to be illuminated. We've already talked about a backer board so that it doesn't go directly into the building and it does provide less holes. The sizing, we can definitely make it smaller. We have no issue with that. We just want to have a sign up on the,
Okay,
so it's whatever we can have up there so we can have a sign, we're very flexible. The color green, we could definitely do a more natural color. We're just looking for the color green.
okay,
And considering the CBD is a plant, it's in nature, so we can go with a more natural color.
Mhm.
We did remove the other signage as far as the windows and stuff. Didn't realize it wasn't part of this assessment, so I don't know how that works. I'll figure that out with getting the window assessed and the one that's hanging, the aluminum one hanging.
Yeah, well, one thing you could do is, once you determine with your sign maker what lettering you'd like to use, we could have our historic officer review it with you and, streamline the process.
Yeah, we will be using D signs for our signage.
Okay,
I know that they just dropped off the designs today. Earlier today, they dropped off the design work that was
Okay.
needed. So I don't know if it made it here or not. They just told me I was all ready for the meeting and they weren't sure if David was going to be on tonight or not.
okay, no problem.
But I will confer with them about the size.
Mhm.
I'll reach out
Okay,
as far as new dimensions and such. The one picture that you saw where it was all lowercase or it was like, that was an earlier, when we were trying to do it ourselves before we hired these signs. So that is no longer, those dimensions are no longer accurate. That top, the one with the lowercase.
Okay.
We would like to have it all capitals for the sign,
Mhm.
if that's okay. If you prefer to have capital C lowercase, that's fine as well. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
for
well,
us.
I would say perhaps the main thing is that it just ties into your identity. If
Right.
if you have standard signage and a standard logo, I
Yeah, then it would
think,
be all caps.
you
That's
probably,
that's
okay.
what's in our logo.
Yeah, and that's an important consideration.
Right.
So, is there any other comments from commission members?
I'd like to make a motion, if I may.
Okay.
To recommend a certificate of appropriateness for the signage presented, to install serif lettering in all caps in the sign band area on a backer board of ivory or warm white color with a pinstripe border. And the lettering size to be approximately 1 inch deep and small enough to scale between the two pilasters. So it would change the height of the letters just a little bit.
And it's understood that the sign will not be lit. Okay, I'd like to second that motion. Oh, sure, go ahead.
I'd also like to put in there that the green is a more natural green or an
Right.
approved green, that the color comes back before the sign is purchased. You know what I mean? Before you go ahead and put any money, but let us make sure the color is accurate.
Right.
And also a recommendation to repair the scarring in the storefront
Thank you.
above as part of this entire project.
Okay, I'll second that
Do you want
amendment.
to mention anything about removing the bracket sign?
Hmm.
We did remove the lettering sign until it's approved, or we don't want to create more holes in the front, but
Mhm.
it's not approved.
That's an existing bracket, right?
Yes.
Okay,
The one that the aluminum sign is hanging, that was already there.
Mhm.
That's why we matched what the other signs were as far as size went. So it was like, it matched what they looked like, just so we had something, because we were open with no signage.
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
And part of my recommendation would be to bring in the, just like you did the drawings, just bring in the new sign that's gonna be attached to the bracket for approval as well.
Okay,
Or the existing, if you plan on using this, you know, it's there, bring us a diagram of that so we can.
okay.
That's all.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you. All right, so I've seconded the motion, and with that, all those in favor of this motion, Seth Cornish. Roger Hudak. I vote aye. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
Ken Lash.
Aye.
Craig Evans, thank you. Then the motion carries. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Relatively.
If I could mention, because this is a delayed meeting, I got word from the city clerk, also because of next week's holiday, that the submittal for these certificates getting to city council is kind of messed. It's not traditional right now, I'll put it that
Right.
way.
Right.
So it might take a little bit of time until this gets through the channels of approvals.
Mhm.
This is just a recommending board. It ultimately goes to city council.
Yeah, I understand.
So normally it would be 2 weeks after this meeting, but because of, again, we're delayed and the holiday, it's not going to quite work out that way.
No,
And that's not just for you, but that's for
Yeah.
everyone at tonight's meeting.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Okay, I think we're up to our next agenda item, which is 510 East 4th Street. Do we have a representative here for 510 East 4th Street? Do we have a representative here for 217 Broadway? Yeah, I guess John Lee probably couldn't make it here tonight.
Did respond.
Okay, well, maybe they'll be in a little later then. How about 301 East 4th Street and 303 East 4th Street?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hi, Mike Hanzo, Housing Business Manager with Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley. Let me know if you need the spelling of that for the
Yes,
minute.
please.
That's H-A-N, B as in David, Z as in zebra, O as in Oscar.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So these are parallel submittals, but I'd like to still do them just individually because there are some slight differences, just to
Sure.
avoid some confusion. This is the photo from the application. It's probably better than mine, although I do want to pull up a couple of my photos as well. That would be image number 9, please. This structure is a 2.5-story, 3-bay, semi-detached wood frame residential building. So in this photograph, it's the left half. The gable roof is sheathed in dark gray asphalt shingles and includes a central dormer with a gambrel roof and 2 1/1 double hung windows. The building dates from circa 1890 and is clad with woodlap siding painted white. The front porch extends across the entire front facade and dates from circa 1910. It has classical revival details, including 2 round Doric posts, atop square pedestals that also support the porch railing, which was boxed in or replaced over time and sheathed in horizontal siding. An open balustrade separates this porch from the adjacent residential structure and may include original porch details. I'll come back to that in a moment. The roof dormer also includes classical revival detailing and was probably installed at the same time as the front porch. So if I think I have a detail, image number 11, please. Oh yeah, around the corner, okay. The roof dormer, sorry, I mentioned that already. A single-story masonry block enclosed rear porch with a separate entrance dates from the mid 20th century. You see that kind of hugging the back of the building and out the back. Proposed alterations, it is proposed to repair and paint all woodwork on the front or south, as well as the side or west facades. Paint the gutters, downspouts, and the storm door to replace 1/1 double hung windows with aluminum clad wooden windows of the same configuration, and to install surface mounted porch light fixture and the numeric address, street address. The guidelines used for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 2 concerning the historic character of a property being retained and preserved. Number 5, the distinctive materials, features, and finishes should be preserved. Number 6, the deteriorated historic features should be repaired rather than replaced. Secretary of Interior Standard number 9 that I referenced in the previous agenda item, as well as the Bethlehem Ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. We could have image number 10, please. The certificate of appropriateness application indicates the intent to prep, prime, and repaint all existing wood clapboard siding and wood trim. Epoxy wood filler is to be used as needed. Sections of the siding and the trim beyond repair are to be replaced in kind before priming and painting to match the adjacent. So here we see the side facade and it's just flat elevation. And then image number 12, please. The existing metal gutters and downspouts, as well as the metal storm door, are also to be repainted. The application also indicates the intent to remove all existing windows and replace them with aluminum clad wood Majesty. There is the series 1/1 double hung windows manufactured by Harvey. The fabrication applied exterior finish is to be either tan or bronze. Needed repairs to the existing front door, the wooden front door, are to be addressed before prepping, priming, and repainting using epoxy wood filler as needed. Should the condition of the existing wood door be determined beyond repair, a replacement door proposed is engineered hardwood, it's masonite or comparable, that should match the style of the existing but to be painted with a lock set and deadbolt and a satin nickel finish. Transom above the door is to receive gold leaf street numbers. There's also a proposed flush mount light fixture in black color to be installed at the ceiling of the front porch. It's within the application itself. It's 12 inches 12 inches by 8 inches and manufactured by Secure Home. The various exterior improvements are appropriate as proposed with a few clarifications and modifications. The proposed scope cover sheet indicates that there are various improvements intended for the wood siding and windows at the quote front and side of the facade. I was just curious about the enclosed porch, which is not wood sided. That must be some kind of a block, I think. And what about the entire rear? All of this concept kind of wraps around the rear. I was just curious because we can see those from the public right away as well. And then below the siding at the water table that's painted green, there's no mention of anything what's going on at the water table. So those are just some things I was thinking. And if there's nothing planned, that's okay. Just we need to know where the limitations are. One thing, and that's why I cited the one Secretary of Interior standards, unless the condition of the windows is really just extreme, we recommend repairs rather than replacement. And you can clarify the condition of those. And oftentimes with the installation of an exterior storm, including repaired originals are our preference over complete replacement. I must say though that if ultimately the replacement is warranted, the proposal would meet our standards. It's aluminum clad, it's double hung. I went to the website and Harvey does note that they custom size each of their windows. What we don't want are replacements that have a lot of gaps that have to be covered with a lot of trim and therefore making the proportions wrong. Just a visual inspection, I saw a mix of 2/2 and 1/1 windows, and I was just curious if you're going to just, with the replacement, make all of them 1/1, because the application just mentioned that would be in kind, but it also stressed 1/1. And I would encourage, if you do go that route, to include a fly screen sash on a lot of times they have that. I think I went to the website, they have that so that the homeowner can open the windows and operate them. A lot of times we've had the experience, if they do the well insulated windows, they never open the windows ever again, and sometimes they're afraid because they just don't have a fly screen. If we don't have it up already, Darlene, number 13, image 13, is that the one or is that a different one? Thank you. Yeah. Aside from the classical columns and the box pedestals, the existing front porch elements are not appropriate. Now, if you do replace in kind or repair, then we accept that. I'm not saying that the proposal is incorrect. You're not going to change that. But if you would present that as a solution, we would say that's not appropriate. I'm curious if perhaps behind that siding, I don't know if anybody's done any investigations, are there perhaps remnants of the original porch? It would have been an open rail, open banister, those kind of things. And the reason I'm asking is separation between these two actually has a segment. You can see that goes from the post to the facade. And I think, I don't vote, I only cite the guidelines, but I think if I was a commissioner, I would want to know, have you explored that porch to see if perhaps they're all hidden in there and you can perhaps reveal them. Without seeing that, I would have had my hesitations, but seeing that, I'm curious if perhaps there's something to that there. I didn't enter the property, so I can't really say anything about replacing the door. I can't, so we're going to depend on you to explain the condition of the door. As long as the original configuration is retained, it shouldn't be a problem. It looked like the upper portion of the door was not a divided light scenario, and the proposal had 9 lights. So we would prefer no divided light since it's a non-divided light door. And obviously I couldn't see the lower portion of the door, so I don't know if it's a panel door, if it has any kind of divisions as well. And to be honest, I couldn't see a transom. It mentions lettering or numbering in the transom above the door. And I didn't want to get too close. I didn't want to invade someone's private property, but I just could not see a transom there at all. So if you could clarify that for me as well. The proposed ceiling light, we've seen those before. There's not a problem with those. You do include in your application one that's more classical revival in style. It is a 4-sided model rather than this more contemporary 8-sided model. You might want to consider that instead. It was one of the options on the sheet you included. It would be just a little bit more appropriate in my opinion. And finally, if there's an LED bulb intended for the new light, we request that it be limited to 3000 Kelvin on the color spectrum. Anything beyond that becomes more industrial or just too blue-white for residential purposes. So I know that's a lot for just a little project going on there, but a lot of these will repeat on the next one as well. So I think some of your clarifications will make a lot more sense as we move to the next agenda item also.
Okay, do you want me to provide some information now or with both projects in bulk?
Yeah, I prefer to keep them separate at this
Okay.
time. And I know that means a little bit of repeat, but some things it'll become obvious when we get to that point.
Okay.
Because we do need separate resolutions because these will create separate certificates.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And Mike, if you could address some of the points that Jeffrey just raised. He mentioned the windows, paint at the water table, approach to the door. Go.
Sure, of course. So I know some other projects, these projects are being completed through Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley, through the Community Action Development Corporation of Bethlehem Facade Program. Quite simply, that program has some limitations and constraints that we need to operate under. While we'd want to be able to do a full restoration of every property we come across, that quite simply isn't feasible with the funding we have. We have community development block grant funding that we're using for these projects, which carries a number of quirks with it. One of the most notable is that we have a hard and fast budget cap. If we ever exceed $25,000 of work, then Pennsylvania prevailing wage will kick in. That's per the policy of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. So then as a result, we're having to pay what are essentially grossly inflated prices on a project where the work is secured by a lien that gets filed against the homeowner's property, where there may be a necessity to repay if they move out before 5 years. So we do always need to closely monitor the cost. That's why we need to draw lines at times and not necessarily address some of the green paint at the bottom of the foundation. The facade program generally doesn't make repairs to the rear of homes as a matter of course. It's intended to focus on the elements that we believe will be the most salient to the overall curb appeal and historic character of the neighborhood. As for the windows and the doors, once again, we're getting back into some of the community development block grant requirements. These homes obviously were built before 1978, so we do have lead paint considerations to keep in mind.
Right. Since
we are using government funds, since we are operating as a public entity that takes lead-based paint concerns very seriously, we do want to hold ourselves to a higher standard of care than the average homeowner might hold themselves to. While we could perform restoration work on the windows, we do find that we get resistance from the class of contractor we bid the work out to.
Sure.
When they do that work, they have to pretty much put their name on it for 30 years, and someone could come back 25 years down the road and try and make a claim that a child got lead poisoning as a result of their work. So when we ask for that kind of intensive restoration work from contractors, we often get inflated prices that just can't be accommodated within the scope of our program. So it is a matter of picking our battles a little bit.
Yeah.
It's often easier, since we need to use the lead safe work practice, to just call to remove the existing and replace with something that's context appropriate. Granted, something that's new is never going to be quite the same as the original. We're not trying to pass it off as that, but we think it's the best solution given the needs of the property and the constraints of the funding we have. Ditto with the door once again. As for the door without divided lights, if that's the preference, we can certainly accommodate that. The light fixture was a stock model that we would have selected, that we would have used in some of our projects. So we can certainly reevaluate. As for windows without screens, if our contractor tried to install windows and not put screens in, we'd tell them to get back to the job because it wasn't finished. So putting the screens in is definitely a must for us. We do appreciate the thoughtful review of the projects. We do appreciate the insight. The approach with these is to try and stretch our rehab dollar as far as we can to have maximum impact while putting together a project that's still manageable in scope as our 4-person staff tries to manage over 80 owner-occupied housing rehab jobs throughout the Lehigh Valley. So hopefully that provides a little clarity and context.
It sure does, and we sure appreciate all the good work your organization's been doing.
Thank you.
And it's an interesting point you bring up with the windows and the lead abatement, and it's almost counterintuitive. You'd think it would be more cost effective to restore what's there, but I certainly understand all the issues that you're up against on that. The only other funny thing I've noticed with new windows installed today is often the stock screens seem to be a fiberglass material, and from my own experience, critters eat through it pretty easy. So if you have a choice to order it with a dark aluminum, I would recommend that.
And anything that we install will be backed up by the manufacturer's material warranty plus a 1-year warranty that all our contractors subscribe to as well on their workmanship. So if a squirrel manages to choose through the screen 10 months down the road, at least we do have a remedy for that. We have a group of dedicated contractors who take their work seriously and their relationship with us seriously, and would come back and make something like that right.
per Jeff's comment about the surface mounted light fixture at the front porch, you know, and looking at the cut sheet you provided, I agree. The one that's next to it, that's the square one, I would agree that seems more appropriate for our district. Is any comments from the commission on this project?
Yeah, I have two questions. Mike, so one of the questions Jeff had brought up or comments, what kind of windows are you putting back in? 1/1? Are you doing all the windows the same? All the replacement windows going to be the same type of window? Can you
Yeah,
explain that a little bit more?
we just do a bulk order of the Harvey Majesties. Everything would be 1/1. I have had conversations with the Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office on past projects about this, as a matter of fact. And I've been advised that if you are replacing windows, 1/1 is generally a preferable course of action to the simulated divided lights. So we'll go with 1/1 throughout. We'll go with double hung windows so homeowners can open them, get some cross breeze and ventilation into their house. And we like the Harvey product because we've had good experiences using them on projects in the past. Our contractors like working with them. And then we put in a product where we're comfortable putting our name as an organization on them as well.
And is the paint color of the property on this one, 301, going to stay the same? Are you matching existing?
Let's see, we haven't proposed, or there hasn't been a color scheme proposed yet, but we do engage the services of a professional colorist who always selects colors based on context within the area.
Okay.
So we will take our best efforts in bringing qualified professionals to select colors. I assure you that the person wearing the white shirt is not the one who has any say in the color selection.
It just comes, that's fine. It just brings the question, if you're only going to do the two sides for the thing, what's it going to happen to the back? Is like the color going to change for the entire structure, all three sides, or is it just the two sides you're working with?
It would just be the two sides we'd be working with. Okay. Once again, painting the rear is usually difficult to get it through the facade program.
We don't usually review paint colors, not for us. You know, only stuff that's considered more permanent, like brick color.
Gary, I had a question. I guess I wasn't quite clear on what's happening, if anything, with the railings. Are you doing anything to update the railings, or is it a matter of dealing with what exists?
It's a matter of dealing with what exists. Once again, it gets back to some of the price caps I was talking about. While we'd always welcome the opportunity to remove aluminum or to remove vinyl where it exists, sometimes if we do exploratory demolition and then are stuck with a surface underneath in worse condition than anticipated, then that can create some budgetary challenges for us. So that's why we needed to focus our attention on the items written in the scope. We don't plan to address any of the cladding with this proposal. We'll just leave what's existing.
That your budget for each home is 25,000?
25,000 max per side. As soon as we get above that, that's when PA prevailing wage kicks in. That's when the price we'd have to pay starts going through the roof.
If you don't mind me asking, do you have a budget for these now, or
I'm trying to recall without access to my construction manager. If that would be information needed by the commission, I can step away at some point and get them on the phone. Curious. But I don't recall the number off the top of my head, and I can follow up. But I can tell you the way they'd be budgeted for now. They'd be budgeted with some room for contingency if we ran into something. We'll generally always leave ourselves at least a 10% contingency margin on any project we do.
Can you clarify the replacement of the front door? What's driving that? Is it rotted?
Sure, once again, that's just visual, or that replacement of the front door was a preference. It's just a preference for something that would potentially increase the visual appeal. Once again, if we're getting to a door, that's another friction surface we're talking about. So if we're going ahead, if we're performing too many treatments to it, we're dealing with lead-based paint once again in all likelihood.
Okay.
That's a little bit easier to do than windows. A contractor can remove the slab and take it into a shop, but they're still having to do work that a lot of them see as fairly risky to take on. If we do need to negotiate, we might potentially be able to get a price to retain and repair the existing door versus replace. Once again, we are going to have to look at it with a matter of cost at the end of the day, but it probably wouldn't hurt to put it out. We bid all our work out. It wouldn't hurt to put it as an alternate to contractors on the bid sheet to give us a price to keep the existing door and to refinish it using their lead safe technique. But there's no guarantee that we'd actually be able to get a feasible price for that, or if we'd have anyone who wanted to bid on it necessarily.
Yeah, I would say a front door in this case is somewhat of a defining feature that I would really want to see is steered towards some, if there's lead, do your remediation, restore it however best you can. But again, I understand what you're saying. I just think it would be really difficult to get a new door that matches what you had replaced. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, I'd like to make a motion for the project at 301 East 4th Street for a certificate of appropriateness as presented with the following clarifications: that the windows will all be 1/1s using the presented Harvey units. They'll be provided with screens. That we recommend retaining, restoring, and remediating the existing front door. We would like to encourage the applicant to use the square ceiling mounted light fixture as being more appropriate. We understand as part of this project, there's painting and restoration, patching of existing siding, and painting of gutters and downspouts. Okay, anyone second? Okay, and
Second.
I think Mike was first, sorry. Any further discussion?
I requested clarification about the transom. I just couldn't see a transom, and it does suggest lettering, which is wonderful to have street numbers,
Right.
gilded street numbers. I just couldn't see the transom, to be honest.
Okay, is there any chance, would there be a good visual of the door in the photos that were taken?
Yeah, I didn't see anything either, and it looks like that transom would really be covered by the porch roof if it's there.
Yeah, 30. Work. 301, and if there was no transom on the door, that would have just been a clerical copy and paste type error in the preparation. So if there is a transom that we can preserve and add gold leaf numbers to, and we'll once again take our cues from the environment around us and try and match any neighboring properties with numbers as closely as possible.
It may be that there's not a separate transom, but rather another light at the top That often happened with some of those taller doors.
Okay, above the, sir, above the door or above your front door, is there a square glass pane?
The main door?
Yes, correct, above the main entrance.
Right here, like this? Oh, no, above there, no, there's not. Sorry, there's not.
Okay.
That's what you're asking, there's not.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll eliminate the tram.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, I think we could put the motion to a vote. Seth Horton. Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
Ken Lausch.
Aye.
Craig Evans.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries and you are approved for your certificate of appropriateness for number 301.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome. And now we will move to number 303, is it?
Correct, 303 East 4th Street. So pardon me if some of this is repeat, and we can skip discussion about things we've already discussed. There are a few unique components to this one, however. Image number 14. And there you see in that picture a fixture that's very similar to what we're suggesting. Yeah. This 2.5-story, 3-bay, semi-detached wood frame residential structure is the mirrored twin of the adjacent building at 301 East 4th Street. It also shares many of its defining features. The gable roof is sheathed in medium gray asphalt shingles and includes a central dormer with a gambrel roof and 2 1/1 double hung windows. Building dates like the other from 1890. Metal siding was installed sometime during the mid 20th century. So this doesn't have the wood siding, it has metal siding. The front porch extends across the front facade and also dates to circa 1910. The classical revival details at the porch and the roof dormer that are visible on the adjacent building have been obscured or removed, probably when the metal siding was installed. The porch railing was boxed in or replaced, but it's different from the adjacent building. It has a vertical board and batten siding. For this project, it is proposed to repair and paint all woodwork on the facade. It's assuming that the metal siding can be removed and the wood clapboard siding is there. Similar to the previous one, to paint the gutters and downspouts in the storm door, to remove the aluminum siding on the south facade and replace in kind with wood clapboard siding. The wood front porch column was to be replaced to match the existing of the other porch. And then it says something that I need a little clarification about, the soffit. I'll get to that in just a moment in my assessment. Like the previous one, the windows are to be replaced on the application south facade only, so that would be what we're looking at the front, with 1/1 double hung windows, aluminum clad wood windows of the same configuration, and like the other one, a porch lamp and a numeric address in the transom, but we're going to scratch the whole transom component. The guideline citations were the same as the previous one, Secretary of Interior Standards numbers 2, 5, 6, and 9, as well as the Bethlehem ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. On my assessment, the application indicates the intent to remove the existing metal siding at the front facade to reveal the original wood clapboard siding and wood trim beneath. Thereafter, it should be prepped, primed, and repainted with epoxy filler as needed. The section of siding and trim beyond repairs to be replaced in kind before priming and painting to match the existing. And like the other, the gutters and storm door are also to be repainted. Application proposes to replace the existing square porch post, that's the one on the far right, painted green. Replace it with a wooden post that matches the door columns at the center and on the other end. It continues by proposing to remove the existing board and batten vertical siding and replacing it with new wood clapboard siding to match the adjacent porch. And that was my concern. The left is existing. If you replace in kind, we don't really say no. But in this case, you're replacing board and batten, which is definitely not appropriate, but you're replacing it with horizontal siding, which also isn't appropriate according to our guidelines. So I'm stuck with a little bit right here. The application also proposes removal of existing aluminum soffit on upper porch and replace with wood eaves to match existing. I'm sorry, I just didn't quite understand that phrase. I didn't know if it meant the actual underside of the porch, the visible portion. I couldn't get on the property to know what's there either, so maybe it's just a bit of wording that needs clarification. Like the previous agenda item, we have the proposed replacement of all windows on the front facade with double hungs 1/1. Oh, I'm sorry, it says front and side. So we're doing removal of the siding on the front and not on the side, but you're doing window replacement. It sounds like on the front and the side. Maybe I'm confused, so the clarification is helpful. The needed repairs to the front wooden door, if possible, is preferred over a replacement. As I stated before, if it's really necessary, the replacement masonite door should match the style of the door. Again, I didn't get too close, so I can't confirm exactly, but whatever's there should be matched if replacement is deemed necessary. I'm going to skip the issue of the transom over the door. Same with the fixture. Here we have a four-sided fixture. I'd prefer to see a four-sided light fixture under the porch. So as I stated, for clarifications, the proposal is appropriate, is proposed with certain modifications or clarifications. The cover sheet talks about the front of the building, but then window replacements on the front and the side of the building. The clarification of what is intended by the aluminum soffit on the upper porch roof. My statement about the windows, you clarified your approach. I'll leave it to the commissioners to vote on that. According to the guidelines, we do prefer, if at all possible, retaining the existing. I understand your logic and your approach, however. Image number 15, I think would help reference to the porch issue. This is, to me, probably the stickiest part. Again, the request is to remove the board and batten, which I agree is not appropriate, but to now mirror what exists on the existing house next door, which if you're starting all over is not appropriate. Officially, we'd want them to do a wooden pickets, wooden balustrade with a top and a bottom rail. If need be, I can talk more about that, but I'll see what the commissioners say. And the other things repeat themselves we had before in reference to the front door, the ceiling light. If it's LED, if you could maximum 3000 Kelvin for the bulb, that would be appreciated. So I'm sorry I skipped around a bit, but I didn't want to repeat too much of what we said before. I tried to highlight the slight differences in this project versus the other one.
Is that it, Jeffrey? Oh, okay. All right. Well, tell us more about what you have planned.
Okay, so once again, with this particular project, to address the porch rail issue, we do want to go for visual consistency between the two sides of the porch. So is there another solution that the commission would propose to address the needs of both, or should we just leave that board and batten as is? And
Well, the first thought that occurs to me is if you're pulling that siding off anyway, let's just see what kind of condition the railing is underneath it. I agree about keeping things consistent between the two homes, but if your railing and balustrade look like they're in great shape, maybe they're in good shape on both sides, and then you could, you should work with that.
And if we need to look, if we pulled off, if we need to look in the approach of a replacement, what type of material would need to be considered? Would it need to be wood? Would something like a composite porch rail system be accepted, or would it?
Yeah, I think we definitely approve composite type railing systems.
Okay, and whenever we put in any kind of composite material or anything like that, we always go go for low profile. We always go for something that's not going to draw attention to itself and just be there and serve its function.
Sure, and you know, of course, the idea is to match as best as you can what was there. Usually 2x2 pickets and the
Right.
very traditional top rail.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify too with the so you're removing the aluminum soffit?
Right.
And is the thought that, well, you're probably going to end up having to repair and patch and paint what's there?
Correct.
Underneath?
So we were thinking if there was anything when we pulled it off that was missing, or if there was any kind of trimmer eaves that just didn't look like they were beyond repair, just not there to just survey other properties that were in the area, potentially fabricate or install something that then would just look appropriate and make the home look like the neighbors, or look like some of the better preserved examples on the block. We did something similar at a project we would have done about 4 years or so back at 414, 416, and 418 Hayes Street, right where we would have removed a bunch of brake metal at a soffit, and then we would have installed corbels to make the property look more complete, or we would have installed historically accurate corbels to make the property look more visually complete. They were an off-the-shelf stock material that our contractor was able to source through their building supply, but they still provided a more complete visual appearance. So our intent would be to do something similar here.
Very good.
Is the siding going to be removed on the dormer as well?
And the siding removals would just be limited to the front of the building here. So the siding would be the
First and second floor.
first and second floors, the entire front facade.
Okay, so the existing dormer would be left as is.
Correct.
What about the windows up there?
I'm sorry. Our hope would be to remove any siding that we could find that existed on the front facade. Just address the whole front facade is usually the intent. All levels.
Okay. Yeah, I had noticed that too, that you have a bit of aluminum siding at that dormer. So, you know, I was curious about that also.
Have you or your contractor done any research? Is that same matching wood behind that aluminum siding on 303 that's there at 301?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
Have the contractors or CACLB or gone behind the aluminum siding that's currently there to see if that does exist at 301 and 303, same wood siding?
No, I don't. There wouldn't have been too much exploratory work yet, or we would have wanted to bring the project before the commission before we started.
Yeah, I just wondering.
Yeah. That'll probably be the first thing we do once we have a certificate of occupancy, or a certificate of appropriateness, get someone out there to inspect the condition.
Yeah, and you know, the details on the dormer at 301 are really great. And so, you know, gotta assume that's the same kind of thing at 303.
I'm assuming color is going to match, two sides are going to match each other or play off each other in some.
Right. The whole color scheme will be visually consistent on both sides.
Hey, any other questions for our applicant? Does someone feel ready to make a motion?
I move that we recommend the certificate of appropriateness for 303 East Fourth as submitted with the clarifications noted in the discussion of details at our meeting.
So Craig, do you want to give any more guidance on how to approach the siding at the porch?
On the railing,
Yeah,
if it's going to be removed, I think, I think it's important to take photos of what happens when it's removed and submit it to the historic officer. If there's going to be any substantive change there.
yeah, I'd like to include in that motion if we can that, we possibly, if whatever you find underneath, if it's the original 2x2 balustrades, that you either repair or replace it with composites. And now, can we add on to the, I think the idea being that you would match both sides. But I'm in favor of having our historic officer review it with you when you get to the point that, things have been uncovered.
Would that need to return to the commission for a further review, or would that
No.
be something that could be
No,
completed?
that would be something that, Jeffrey and I can decide with you at the time, if that's okay with the other commission members.
I feel fine. Yep.
Okay, so I think there's a motion on the floor. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Seth Cornish?
Aye.
Roger Hudak?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mike Simonson?
Aye.
Ken Lausch?
Aye.
Craig Evans?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries, and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Just one question. I know it was mentioned that certificates are running a little bit behind right now. Is there any estimate as to timetable, just so I can report back to my construction manager for purposes of scheduling bid outs and such?
Darlene, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. The subsequent city council meeting will be on the 21st. Is that correct? Yeah, okay.
Okay, perfect.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you too. So I'm going to ask again if we have anyone here representing 510 East 4th Street or 217 Broadway. If not, we shall move on to 306 South New Street. And Craig, you'll take.
Hello, John Trapani here. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Jeffrey, you may go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Of course I have.
All right. Jeffrey, do you have the summary of the application for?
Yes, if we could please have image number 16, please. .306 South New Street. Construction of this semi-detached 6-story commercial building located on the corner of South New Street and West 3rd Street was initiated in 2016 and is contemporary in style. Primary facades of both streets are clad in brick on the 2nd through 4th floors. The other floor levels and the corner are clad in glass and metal panels. The facade of the 6th floor is set back 12 feet to hinder visibility from the street, creating an open terrace along the north and east facades. As a reminder, HCC is mandated with preserving structures dating from the designated era of the Historic Conservation District. Those dates are circa 1895 to 1950. Thus, this building is not considered a contributing structure to the district. Proposed alteration, it is proposed to install new signage. The guideline citations I used for my assessment include Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. The ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of the meeting, as well as our guidelines for signage. Both of those I elaborated a bit on agenda item number 1. My evaluation. During the meeting on November the 19th, 2018, Historic Conservation Commission assessed an application to install similar signage on the north facade, and that's why I wanted to show this image. The facade in shadow is the north facade. This was reviewed by the commission in late 2018. It was to be installed within the metal panel handrail segment at the 6th floor level where the building cantilevers out over the corner entrance. The proposed signage included one set of stainless steel letters spelling out Zest and the company logo in all capital, sans serif stylized stencil lettering, all painted black at 30 inches tall by 83.7 inches wide. It had they had 1-inch returns and a polycarbonate back. They were mounted 1.5 inches off of a rigid sign backer painted to match the gray panels behind. Individual letter components were backlit with a halo effect using white LED lighting. At that time, there was no dimension for the backer. It was to be screwed directly into the existing metal facade cladding. HCC determined that the proposed signage at the time was appropriate for the non-contributing structure, conditional that all conduits, raceways, and junction boxes that service illumination would not be visible from the facade. So we see the results of that review and approval in the image provided. And then based on the application, we see to the right on the screen, the applicant's proposing a quite similar signage around the corner on the east facade. The current proposal measures 38 inches tall by 116 inches wide. Lettering is 30 inches tall by 108 inches wide. The previous lettering was 83 inches wide, so I wasn't quite sure that discrepancy. Otherwise, all proposed sign elements seem to match the signage that was already deemed appropriate by HCC. So in my opinion, new signage is appropriate as proposed with clarifications. I would want the dimensions reduced so that it matches the existing. So a bit smaller, not 116 inches wide, but 84 inches wide. As a repeat, it has internal illumination on the application. My assumption is that still means that the front letters are solid and that's only there to provide the backlighting for the halo effect. Again, we don't deem illumination through the front of letters as appropriate. And as we required on the previous sign, I just would appreciate confirmation that all conduits, raceways, junction boxes, etc. associated with illumination are not visible from the front facade.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Mr. Prani, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that the sign will conform with Mr. Long's request that it's the exact same as the one that's there. All the conduits, raceways, everything will be hidden like it is now. And it is the same exact thing as a backlit sign. No, the sign, the letters will not be illuminated. There will be the halo effect.
Okay. So we're looking at just the same image around the corner.
Facing east.
Okay. Does anyone on the commission have any questions? Anyone have a motion?
To approve the sign as requested, given that it's the 83 4 inches wide as opposed to the 108. same as the existing sign on the building.
Second?
No second.
Thank you, Roger. I'll call a vote. Any
Aye.
further discussion? Okay, Seth,
Aye.
Roger,
Aye.
Gary, you recused?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Turn the meeting back over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Craig. And it looks like we are now at 307 East Third Street. And is the applicant for 307 East Third Street here?
I'm here. Waiting for John Callahan to.
Okay,
He left.
well, we got up to you a little quicker than we thought we would for tonight, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I guess as soon as Mr. Callahan gets back here, you can, well, please announce yourself. And
Yes, my name is Carlos Tovar from USA Architects,
Okay.
project manager.
Carlos, how do you spell your last name?
Tovar, which is T and Thomas, O, V and Victor, AR, Tovar.
Thank you, Carlos. Mhm. Well, greetings. Thank you for both joining us tonight, Mr. Callahan and Mr. Tovar.
Thank you.
And Jeffrey, I think we can turn over to you. Do we need to have
I'd just
Darlene
like
get
to
back?
politely wait for our technician to return.
Sorry. Good point.
Interesting.
Did he reach out to you? Hmm. Yeah. You know, there was some confusion about the date, which
Sounded like a beard. But not a beard, John.
Hmm.
That wasn't a beard.
I wish.
It sounded pretty good.
I wish. That may be in my future, but not yet.
Yeah.
Not right now.
You know,
Yeah, and it's for two different projects too. Yeah. All right, so maybe we'll see you in another two weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that, only 2 weeks. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And it's supposed to look like a mansard.
Or maybe it's disappears.
It makes it look like it's only a 3-story.
So if I could have, please, image number 17. Thank you. 307 East 3rd Street. Building description, there is no built structure at this project location. Rather, there are currently 10 mature trees, 6 ornamental lampposts, all lining East 3rd Street, Columbia Street, and Taylor Street, along with 48 parking spaces within the existing surface lots. It is proposed to construct a new 5-story building at the current location of a surface parking lot. Building will be mixed use, including retail space on the first floor and 1- and 2-bedroom apartments on the entry level and upper floors. The guideline citations include the Bethlehem ordinance that Mr. Lader cited at the beginning of tonight's meeting, as well as the Historic Conservation District design guidelines concerning new construction that I referenced under, well, I would have referenced under agenda number 3. Evaluation, considering it's the first time we've seen this project, is quite extensive, so bear with me as I go through various components. I do break it down into 2 overarching kind of discussion phases. The application indicates the intent to construct a new 5-story mixed-use building currently used as a surface parking lot with many mature trees and ornamental lampposts lining the public sidewalks. The south facade facing East 3rd Street. So now if we could go to the application itself, please. Of the proposed development project is approximately 108 feet wide. The west facade facing Taylor Street is approximately 128 feet wide, and the overall building height is approximately 58 feet tall. That would exclude any kind of mechanical penthouses, stairs, all those kind of things that, because of project development, don't yet appear on the drawings. There's an inner courtyard that's accessed from walkways leading to the along the east facade. We don't see those implied here. I'm assuming they will come at a later date. That would separate the 5-story building from the 3-story mixed-use building just to the immediate east. According to the supplemental architectural narrative, the proposed building includes approximately 2,000 square feet of commercial retail space at the entry floor level. In this rendering, it will be the portion to the far left on the entry level. The remaining building on the first floor, as well as the remaining upper floors, would be residential units and supporting spaces that include 44 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. The accompanying architectural drawings do not indicate any below-grade basement or cellar level activity or any kind of on-site parking. My assessment and recommendations for approval should focus on 2 main concepts, as I stated. 1, the overarching concept about size, scale, and proportion of the overall development project. Once I've gone through that assessment, and hopefully the discussion can be focused on that, then we focus more on the architectural components of new construction with the storefronts at the street level and the somewhat traditional facade treatments for the upper floors. So the first category, size, scale, and proportion. The relevant design guidelines note, quote, new construction should reflect the dominant cornice and roof heights of the adjacent buildings and the proportions of the building elements to one another and the streetscape, end quote. They continue, quote, in South Bethlehem, where 2- and 3-story buildings are the norm, any buildings that digress from these standards seriously impact the historic conservation district. If large-scale construction is considered, particular attention will be given to the effect of the proposed building on the streetscape, as well as of the district as a whole. So anytime we have anything that's over the traditional 2 and 3 stories, the guidelines state that it's not only relevant to the immediate block, the building to the left and to the right, et cetera, really has relevance for the entire district. So we have to look at it from both of those perspectives. If it could have image number 18, please. The current design proposal attempts to address the existing dominant cornice heights by incorporating a cornice detail above the fourth floor level, However, an inventory of the neighboring buildings, these are buildings immediately across the street from the site. An inventory of those confirmed the existence of only 1, 2, 2.5, and there's 1 3-story structure. So the current proposal digresses from the dominant cornice heights, with the proposed upper cornice at the above the 4th floor level, and then yet continues to rise yet another full story, making it a 5-story building. If we could have then image number 15, please. Excuse me, 15. No, 19, I'm sorry, 19. The applicant might choose to reference their own 5-story mixed-use development project nearby. However, that structure is located 2 blocks east. It sits across East 3rd Street from a 6-story building, not the 2.5-story buildings like we have at the current site. The building in this image on the right of their contemporary building is the former Bethlehem Steel office building, now part of the Northampton County Community College branch. And also those buildings are outside the boundaries of the Historic Conservation District. So according to our guidelines, don't really have relevance to our discussion. HCC meeting minutes describe deliberation about and ultimate approval of the Lehigh Valley Charter High School for the Arts, which is located within the district boundaries and would be between this location we see on the screen and the proposed location. And probably, darling, that shows up best on the applicant's own set of drawings. That would be sheet number 8 of the 16 within the application. Perfect, yeah. So there we see the school building on the right. We see the existing mixed-use building that's kind of freestanding there in the middle, and then we see the proposal on the left. So I did go to the minutes of the meetings where that school building was deliberated. It was deliberated quite a lot, to be honest. The approved design of the school building rises 3 stories. You can see that from it's a photo montage here, the window levels, etc. And also the school is required to build 1 full story below grade to accommodate the maximum 3-story height level. Because of its institutional use, the floor to ceiling heights of the school structure are taller than residential construction. So the approved 55-foot building was conceived as a mediator between the taller buildings, formerly Bethlehem Steel buildings, and which are just outside the district, that would be further to the right, and then the smaller scale commercial and residential structures within the district, which are beginning with the school and continuing to the left. And even with the approval of the 3 stories, you can see there was a compromise on the far left of the school, so that will be the west facade. You see how they actually step down the building even further to accommodate the desire to kind of step down from Bethlehem Steel down to the historic district. Based upon the relevant design guidelines, the current proposal for a 5-story structure that measures approximately 58 feet tall is inappropriate for the immediate streetscape and more generally for the overall district. The proposed building height would also interrupt the design concept of the nearby charter school that steps down from the taller office buildings, which are outside the district, and transition to the smaller scale mixed-use structures within the district. And then, Darlene, images 20 and 21, if you could find those, please. Thank you.
They were up just up there. They were just up there.
So this is then moving one block eastward. So behind us, we now have the taller buildings that are just outside the district. And here we see, although it's reverse camera, we see the school on the left and a new construction on the right that also matches the 3 stories and the approximate height. It's perceived as a residential building, commercial at the bottom and residential, but it actually is all commercial on the right. So those are a bit taller, and you can see how the step down from the Bethlehem Steel buildings in the background as we move into the district. Excuse me, and then we have the one existing standalone mixed-use 3-story structure to the left there. So the project site would then, if I turn my camera, will be immediately to the left. And then image number 21, please. And here we see evidence in the district where we have a 5-story structure opposite across the street from a 2.5-story residential streetscape. What that means, just proportional to having something across the street. It's also relevant to something else I'm going to talk about, so it's okay if we leave that. If you want to then, however, go back to their application, that would be helpful. The image we had before was perfect, actually. So when we get past the overarching issue of the size and scale of the building, then we go to the guidelines concerning new construction. Those guidelines continue by referencing such topics as rhythm and patterns, windows and door openings, materials and textures, architectural details, shape and massing, as well as streetscapes. Though conceived as one structure, the overall building mass shifts in materiality at the lowest 4 floor levels with differing materials and colors to appear as a series of row houses. So here we see when it's in floor plan configuration, it's one contiguous building, but presents itself in facade as in this one streetscape as almost like 4 individual row houses. Architectural features include traditionally inspired storefronts at the street level along East 3rd Street and turn the corner along Taylor Street, and include such elements as double hung windows, casement windows, sliding glass doors, Juliet balconies, cast sills and lintels at the remaining facades, as well as an ornamental cornice above the 4th floor level. The facades of the lower 4 floor levels also include cast stone panels in white color, along with a brick veneer systems in dark red, light red, and black colors, while the proposed sheathing for the entire 5th floor facade is smooth surface cement board scallop siding in a dark gray color, according to the application to quote, read as a mansard roof, end quote. The 5th floor level sets back at the southwest corner. So in this detail, it's the left portion, approximately 6 feet to form a private terrace for the corner residential unit. And again, approximately 16 feet back on the far right to create a common rooftop terrace for all of the tenants. Otherwise, the facade at the 5th level simply extends vertically from the floor levels below. Should HCC consider the proposed 5-story structure as appropriate, the applicant is encouraged to reconsider several important design elements. Based on the current floor plans, the orientations of both stairwells result in interim landings that would interrupt the associated windows. So this might be a little hard to understand, but in the facade we see here, the double doors that are centered in the facade, that actually there is a stairwell behind that. And at each window above that, the landing would hit the window at halfway. So you would have windows that are actually interrupted by a landing, and depending on how the light configuration, all this kind of things are, it creates kind of this unusual effect that I'm not aware we have much of any example of that in the district. Ways to avoid that would be either moving the stairs deeper into the project, which most of the buildings that have this aesthetic have the stairs deeper so that the window is used. It's a residential space, not a stair. They could consider that, or they could also reconsider the actual windows and admit that that's a stair hall and do something unique, do a different window type, recess it, those kind of things. We've seen that approach as well. While we're looking at windows, sometimes the window spacing within these different units is a little different or off. So as we move forward, I'd like to work a bit closer with the applicant, especially you can see like the stair, how the windows that illuminate that stair, there's a wider space between those and the other windows. Typically, for row houses, everything would be uniform in reference to the spacing of the windows, etc. Sliding glass doors, according to our guidelines, are inappropriate. So within the district, so other window types should definitely be considered for those. Image number 22, please. South Bethlehem does include many 2- and 3-story mixed-use attached buildings that serve as the inspiration for the current design. And here's a close-up of that series of buildings I showed before with the differential of the 5- and 6-story building across the street. This is a 2-story version, and then the next version, please, would be image number 23. And there are ample examples throughout the historic district of this 2- and 3-story construction where you have windows that align, you have an upper cornice, and most often they're Federal Revival or Italianate in style. And the front facade above the cornice is a parapet and there's a flat roof behind it. If we can now see image 24. Mansard roofs are sparingly found in South Bethlehem. They do exist, there are a few of those. And oftentimes they're limited to classical revival, which we see here. It's a little hard because it's under scaffolding, but there's a mansard roof behind, and this is just a block east of the project site. Or the Queen Anne structures. I think image number 25 might be a Queen Anne structure. No, okay, we've already moved to that, that's okay. There is one example I found of an Italianate, which is kind of what they're going for the aesthetic. It does indeed have a mansard roof, but it's a true mansard. If you look above the upper cornice, you see how a mansard roof really has 2 pitches to it. It has a steep pitch lower portion to it, and then the upper portion of a mansard roof has a low pitch. And most often in the steep pitch portions, you have, as we see here, roof dormers as well. This is on the corner of Wyandotte and West 4th Streets. Mansard roofs allow greater use of the attic level rather than sacrificing floor area to knee walls typical of gable and hip roofs, and they often integrate roof dormers to accommodate natural light and ventilation. The applicant's current design proposal not only adds another 4th floor level to the typical row houses we've seen of 2 and 3 stories, but has another 5th floor that quote unquote reads as a mansard roof, but in reality is simply an extension of the vertical wall system. So if we could go back to their application, you'll see this difference. It's really just a straight, except for this 2 setbacks for the terraces, it really is just an extension of the wall below. In my opinion, if the commission does conceive of a 5-story building as being appropriate, I would strongly encourage that the uppermost floor be reconceived in design, maybe not trying to pretend something it's not as a mansard roof. And I would also encourage that it should be set back significantly from the remaining facade so that it is limited in perception from the public right-of-way. We've had that on a couple of other projects. There were additions to existing buildings. And if I'm not mistaken, those setbacks were, I think, 12 feet and 16 feet, respectively. So a different concept at the entry floor level, there's a chamfer condition at the southwest corner. It's a little hard to see here. It means that there's an angle at the corner. You see that best in the floor plan. We have images 26 and 27, if you could please. There are actually a lot of examples of chamfers throughout the district that accommodates the required site triangle at the intersection. And those so-called clipped corners, when they exist, serve as entrances into the shop. So here we see directly across the street from the project location. The post represents the corner, and that clipped corner or chamfered corner becomes the entryway into that commercial space. Image 27 also includes, 28, that was 28, 29, and 30. Oh, I'm sorry, 26, 27. Oh, it was a close-up, I'm sorry, just in case it was hard to perceive. Sometimes it's hard to perceive. Then 28, 29, and 30 all are examples. Here we see a few blocks away, a building from a different period, but also that same concept of the corner when it's chamfered serves as the main entrance to the commercial space. The next one, 29. Here we see a contemporary building from the 1980s. They also took that concept. The chamfered corner serves as the entrance. Even though it's not a historic building, they used that as a rule to follow from the district and made that the entrance. And then number 30, indeed, the applicants themselves used the same element on their building, the 5-story building a couple blocks away. On both corners, both chamfered corners have the entrances to the commercial space at the chamfered corner. So in my opinion, because we have that system in the district, I would encourage them to explore the potential of using the corner condition as an entrance into the commercial location. So that concludes my assessment of the building. Again, the overalls and then the architectural details. I do have some closing comments. The subsequent reviews with HCC, because in my opinion, this project is going to require a series of reviews considering levels of detail. We would want to see much more information in a later date, not today, concerning proposed window and door types, the cast sills and lintels, the profiles for the cornices, and then various facade materials. For ongoing project development, the applicant should note that tinted or reflective glass is inappropriate within the district, while appropriate window light divisions are never wider in dimension than in height. The walkways leading from the public sidewalks to the inner courtyard necessitate some kind of privacy or security fencing and gates. So sometime we would need to see details concerning those at a future meeting. The applicant is also encouraged to see the specific guidelines for storefronts. So we do have design guidelines in general, and then there's a specific set of guidelines for storefronts, and that should provide a lot of helpful detailing for the storefronts. Similarly, there are guidelines for signage, and I would encourage the applicant to conceive of an overall building signage concept early, because that oftentimes has a design effect down the road, and if you don't plan for those soon, sometimes it's hard to find appropriate locations for signage. Also, any kind of lighting fixtures will necessitate a review. Though outside HCC's purview, the applicant's intentions to replace 10 existing mature trees and 6 ornamental lampposts lining East 3rd Street, Columbia Street, and Taylor Street are also appreciated. I think they do show up on the site plan, but I couldn't do a count. And then also clarification about the needed parking spaces for tenants of 44 apartment units, along with a solution for the loss of 48 existing parking spaces of the current lot would also be appreciated.
Very good. Thank you, Jeffrey. Carlos or John, if one of you is able to tell us more about your project and address some of the points that Jeffrey made.
I'll start off and then turn it over to Carlos. My name is John Callahan. I'm Director of Development for Perron Development. With me this evening is Carlos Tovar from USA Architects, the architect for this particular project. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before the board this evening. As was stated, this was a parking lot that was previously owned by Bethlehem Steel. I'm sure that prior to Bethlehem Steel's ownership, it was a building. That was often the pattern in South Bethlehem. Bethlehem Steel, in the need for more ever increasing parking demand, purchased the lot and then probably demolished the building, and now it's a 48 space parking lot. We lease the sort of back bay free of charge to the factory at the moment. So they provide parking. We provide parking for them as to help them continue to grow. And the front bay of the existing lot is leased to the Bethlehem Parking Authority right now for metered parking. So obviously, it's not anybody's intention to have surface lots along 3rd Street. It's not an ideal situation from an urban planning standpoint. It's kind of described often as a missing tooth. So, you know, it's a very suburban style situation, and we were very careful and mindful as we sited the building to line up this building with the existing streetscape and the buildings nearby in an effort to do sort of this urban infill project. We believe that it's appropriate in terms of density. I think the more that we can bring more residents to South Bethlehem, the better we can support the commercial district in South Bethlehem. And that is our intention here, is to sort of, you know, kind of what's old is new again, and to put a building where a building previously was, and sort of make that whole experience of walking down 3rd Street more interesting. As was stated, now in terms of the height of the building, we believe that it's an appropriate scale. While when I think, Carlos, if you could pull up, I think it's probably the 3rd or 4th slide, the one that's got the sun movements on it. If you look here, both this is an aerial view of the sort of scale of the Charter Art School to the east, and then across the street is the sort of Polk Street building, large scale, and to the back behind us is the factory, which is a very large scale building. And even though not particularly tall building, the Seatown building, catty corner to us, is a fairly large scale building, taking up, you know, about half of that city block. So when you look at the size of our site in comparison to some of the scale of the buildings nearby, we feel that it's appropriate. What wasn't mentioned, because there was a discussion, we should address the issue of parking. About a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the parking authority broke ground, or had a ceremonial groundbreaking for what will be a 750 space parking garage at the corner of Polk and 3rd, which is now a similar parking lot to what we're looking to redevelop. So obviously that's going to be a very large scale project. I acknowledge that it's outside of the district, but you know, the charter school was within the district, and that, you know, across the street where the parking garage is going to go is just outside the district, and as is the factory. But when you look at sort of what's around us in our immediate neighborhood, we believe that the scale of this project is certainly appropriate. In the front of the 750 space parking garage will also be probably a 45 unit project that will mask the front of the parking garage. It'll be of a similar height than the NCC building, which is 6 stories. So as you work your way down east along 3rd Street, you see the scale of the buildings change dramatically. My understanding is that the city recently is looking at perhaps changing their height restrictions in this particular area, and there is no restriction now, correct?
Well, the restriction is 150 feet.
All right, so the current restriction is 150 feet, we're 58 feet, but even after the city, if they were to move forward with changing those height limitations going forward, the potential or likely recommendation would be 60 feet. So even under the new recommendation, we'd still be 2 feet below that for this area. So we feel it is in keeping with what both is currently allowed and what we think the future will allow for the city. So to the extent that those are sort of the guidelines that we should follow, we feel like we are appropriate with both what's around us and what the city will be recommending going forward. I'm going to let Carlos sort of speak to some of the architectural elements. I think that Mr. Long did a nice job describing sort of our attempts at creating, you know, we recognize that it's one building, but we did our best to sort of create this sort of rhythm and feel and introduce some verticality to the building versus it's sort of having this kind of horizontal feel as one large building. So it sort of does have the illusion, so to speak, of appearing like four separate buildings along 3rd Street. So we did try to kind of work within the spirit of those guidelines to introduce that rhythm that is currently exists in South Bethlehem. As for the mansard roof, again, the goal was, while it's a 5-story building, again, to create a bit of the illusion of that 5th story being a roof, and the hope that the building would sort of appear a little less tall as a result of that roof being incorporated, that mansard sort of illusion of that mansard in that 5th story. So all those things were sort of recognizing that this is still nonetheless a 5-story building, and while we feel 58 feet is appropriate, we feel it's sort of we've tried to make it smaller in essence, that by making that roof that 5th floor. So
And just a quick
Yes.
question on this diagram in front of us with the sun. So, you know, I see on this, it looks like the shadows would, from the building would mostly be cast on the Columbia Street side. Explain what are the blue arrows supposed to represent winds or something? What is it?
Correct. Blue is to represent winds. So you are correct. A lot of the shadows, they're gonna move on the south side of the building. So a lot of the shadows, they're gonna go towards Columbia Street. So that's correct.
Oh, okay. And what are you trying to say with the blue arrows?
It's just the wind, how the wind will face the building. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't really understand that one either. Well, the wind moves all the time,
Yeah.
Carlos.
No,
How do we
it
know it's gonna?
depends.
Okay.
Most of the wind's coming
Uh,
from the west.
I mean, is it something to be concerned about or something to
No.
celebrate, or I don't know?
Yeah, no.
I'm just asking.
No, we always like to look at it because depending how you open the building, sometimes
Okay.
you can get a lot of winds, but no in this case. And just to, now that the word on the images allows the city blocks are 150 or 140 by 350. Especially in that block, as you can appreciate, a lot of the building, majority of the building are taking 2/3 of the lot. Our proposed buildings is actually taking only 1/3 of that city block. As you can see on Columbia Street, on the north side of the building, the warehouse take, almost 90% of the city block, and then across the street, it's just the two buildings the 2.5-story house where the sun is covering. Those two buildings are about 70 feet or 75 feet, and our building is 105. So our building is still like 15 feet wider, but when you go to the adjacent property, that property is actually 240 feet long. So it's interesting, the what we are proposing our building, actually, you can see there is a lot of city block with a lot of masses of existing building. Other thing that you can appreciate here is 3rd Street. When you count the sidewalks on the roads, it's actually a 50 feet wide. So when you look at 50 feet wide, your building is a 58 feet high. From the other side of the street, you will be able to look at the 5th floor. So the image that we saw, the other example of 5-story was looking at a city block where the street was 25 feet or 24 feet. So when you look at 24 feet and you see the 5 feet, then you can see the difference in height. But I just want to clarify that we look at this. We really look at this, and you can actually see how our building respond to actually the misuse next to it. Anything else, John?
I mean,
Okay, excellent. So can we go to image 13, page 13, please? Yeah. Actually, the one before that, sorry, so that was 12. Excellent. Actually, in this facade, what we're looking at, since we started the beginning of the project, we want to create a design. The whole design intent is to do something to complement the system architecture. Other approach that we could have in the building was have the building with one color consistent throughout, but we didn't want to have that because I have been living in Bethlehem for the last of my 15 years. I live on the south side, not too far, and now I live on the north side. So I'm a resident of Bethlehem. So as an architect, you not many times had the opportunity to work in your neighborhood. So somebody like me that I walk the neighborhood, the south side all the time, I really saying, wow, this is a great opportunity to actually to bring that back. So I really, Jeff, I really I really understand his comments, and I'm glad that somebody else is looking at this thing, and I'll be willing to work with him in the near future as on the project keep moving forward. But again, the whole idea was to show this raw feeling. And we understand that the building is 5-story, but let's have this raw feeling, which is throughout the south side and the north side. Represent a little bit of the architecture from the late 1800s to the early 1300s. Try to look at some of those brick materials that they are local. And again, the way that we designed the retail was to complement the historic requirements, which where we set back the storefront of the retail. And that's really something that complements what is really on the adjacent retails in the area. The building have 4 bases. The corner is going to be the cast stone corners, and a lot of the other are brick veneers. The upper level is the 5th level. And again, we didn't want to maintain just 5-story high. We changed the material on that floor. So it reads, I'm not trying to, it reads as a men's roof. It reads as a men's roof or roof of a different style of architecture. And setting back the corners of the building, which setting back the corner on the right side, our corners is, I believe is 8 feet, about 10 feet higher than the mixed-use building, the little building next to it. So, you know, when we try, and as you look, our width of our base actually match that too, like our scale. This is why the first volume is not 3 bays, it's just only 2 bays. To actually to relay the building adjacent. So those are the things, and this is what I'm trying to clarify. Those are the things that we really consider. And then we want actually the ground floor to, right on the 3rd Street, we want to activate that. The retail space is not only the wide area on the left side, it's actually the next base as well. And then we have the lobby space too for the project. Go to the next image, 14. In image 14, you can actually see we define the volume on the corner, and then as you go down on Taylor Street, you go up north, because that's going north. Again, we just repeat the raw home feeling when corners on the 1st floor and chain of the material. We're providing a wide sidewalls. They're gonna be at least 12 feet wide, again, helping with that shadow line and move the building back. Next, please. And this is the rear corner of the building. This is the Columbia Street and the Taylor Street. As you can see, our approach was to maintain the architecture of the building all the way around. We really want to bring we believe the Columbia Street eventually in the future is going to develop, and it's a very important street in the city. Right now, as you can see, allow for building the charter school, had their generator, the loading dock down there. And then we had the little patio. But of course, in our building, we want to maintain the hierarchy. We want to maintain this good architecture everywhere, how you see the building. And next. The last one is actually what we represent the lobby area. The lobby area, what we're trying to do, you know, as now in new buildings, a lot of people are, lobbies are a way of, they activate their buildings. A lot of a lobby now in buildings are more like a lounge in a hotel area, which is a lot of packaging, a lot of deliveries of packaging, a lot of people opening packaging, a lot of people are talking to their neighbors, people going in and out to cafes, people going in and out to the city. So lobbies now are larger. In this case, we're proposing an 850 square feet lobby, which what we're trying to do is activate that. So we want to see every day something happen. Doesn't matter what time it is during the day. We always want to see people that they, you know, as soon you drive to 3rd Street, you see always people on the lobby, you see people on the retail space. We want to activate that. When this, yeah.
Yeah, I think that obviously we're
we'll cover more when you ask questions, but
Mhm.
So that covered all the corners, yeah.
Okay. One question I have is, why can't the fifth floor be designed more like a true mansard instead of perfectly vertical walls?
Yes, because the issue in that is these buildings are wood construction, 4 stories, flat roof in the area, the way how it is. So
Mhm.
we are supporting trusses.
Mhm.
So at the end, has to be supported by bearing walls. So when you start creating mansard roof, you have to angular.
That's true.
So it becomes not feasible in this project type.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
It become feasible. It's just because the way now we have to bring a heavy structure in the area because the angular walls at the end.
Mhm.
Now a roof or trusses has to bear in something.
Yes.
So because we have roof trusses in this building running such a long distance, we need to have bearing walls at the end. So that's the challenge on these buildings.
I think it would really help the mass and the scale of the building if they were angled like a true mansard. So, we'd just like to, encourage you to consider that.
Correct. I'm not sure, probably I was not really clear, but because the way how the structure goes, we have roof trusses on the
Mhm.
flat roof and they go straight and they have to be bearing for exterior wall. So if I do an angular wall,
Mhm.
now my truss is gonna be supported by angular
But-
wall.
Right.
So I have to do
But
other
that angle can be false. Your support for the roof truss can still be vertical. And the exterior finish can have a slope to it where it's not bearing.
That's correct. That's correct.
In which case, it would look more like the mansard that, that Gary was referring to.
You are totally correct. That's the way to do it. And then we, not for a buildings like that, but we done it in the past. So what's happening when what you're saying is, because again, it's wood construction, everything has to go all the way down. So if now I move the back the way that you are saying, yes, I can do that. I can move the wall back, but that needs to be supported by something. So it become more or less the same challenge that every time that we have to do a terrace. So when we have to do a terrace, we have to move the building back and we have to put new support. So this is why a lot of people don't have terrace on the upper level because it becomes a challenge.
Okay.
So again, for us was okay, if we want to have the fifth floor, let's just try to make it look like a mansard. But yes, I really appreciate you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a clever use of material, and I certainly understand what you're trying to do, but it does kind of throws me for a loop, seeing it go perfectly vertical when it looks like it wants to slant a little bit.
Correct.
Especially because you're using a roofing material on it. Well, it's not a roofing.
Correct. It's not a roofing.
it's not a roofing material. It sort of mimics a roofing material.
Okay, understood. Well, I can tell everybody's in love with the project. No, it really is a beautiful project.
Thank you.
There is quite a
We're very proud of it.
to say about it. Hoping some other commission members might ask some questions.
Where is that new garage actually going in?
That's at the corner of Third and Polk.
Okay.
So it's at the parking lot next to NCC right now.
This is the ice rink back in
And then how tall is that going to be? Do you know? Anybody know?
It's 760 spaces. Like it's going to be probably as tall as the 6-story NCC building, is my understanding. Now, parking garages floor to floor are typically less than residential, so it'll probably have more floors than 6, but it'll height-wise probably be about the same as NCC.
For frame of reference on that, I believe Wind Creek's parking lot is 700. 750 parking spaces too. You're looking at about that height. Reference.
Wind Creek's garage is 5,000.
The one I'm thinking of is level wise.
Oh,
You know what
okay.
I mean? Yeah, so I think that's about the height you're looking at, about 50, it's about 60 something, I think.
I think we are anticipating our design in the front that would mask the garage
Right.
to be 5 stories. At least, perhaps a total of 6.
That in the historic district? That's
No.
unrelated, but I'm just curious. Okay.
We're going to try to match up the same height as the garage. So it's going to be at least 5, perhaps 6 stories. The building, the front building.
One question I had was with the roof terraces. So typically, I know Jeff mentioned it in his analysis when he was going through it, that we do the step back roof terrace on these buildings. So my one question was, is the roof terrace in the, I don't know, the drawing I'm looking at, it would be over the bank or over the tenant space there, I'm sorry. Is that just accessed by that one unit?
The one that we have, if you see the graphic, yes, on that corner on the left side, just for one unit, correct,
Okay,
there.
so it almost have a private entrance and exit. And then the other one is a community roof terrace?
That's correct. That's the one that's set back 15 feet.
I think we have a floor plan for that floor if you want to see it.
I'm looking at, I
Okay.
got different drawings in front of me, that's why I was,
That one. Yep.
yes.
Yes.
Correct.
The one on the new one that came before us on third. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know if you know off your head.
No. yeah, but that could help. So in other words, you're thinking of suggesting a setback. Or,
Yeah.
I think that's,
One of the things that we tend to struggle with, and, you know, we've talked about it some here tonight, and you mentioned as far as the new potential elevation or height limitations and so on. But one of the things that we struggle with is evaluating, you know, size and scale. And while you're right in that the building's footprints are larger scaled, not all the heights are the same. And so we're looking at some digression from the 2 and 2.5 and 3-story buildings that sort of predominate a lot of the district. When you start to introduce these taller buildings, and even though they're, you know, 150 feet, they do impact the canyon kind of feel potentially when you're at the pedestrian level. So we struggle with, you know, what makes sense. And certainly aesthetically appealing to have the differentiation of 4 segments to the building. And I like that, and there are other applications that have come to us where that would have been a really good idea. Didn't happen to happen, but I struggle personally with, you know, the height creeping up. And so that treatment of that upper level, I think, is really kind of critical. From the standpoint of setting precedent, if nothing else, I mean, we want to have it all fit in and feel good, and it's got to be that people choose to develop in Bethlehem rather than do us a favor and come here, and that's kind of just a reaction that I would like to express to you. Is just I struggle a little bit with the height. I appreciate the other efforts and even that effort And I understand that the taller the building is, the more units you can put in it, and the more remunerative it's going to be. But that isn't our particular worry. We're charged with dealing with it on an aesthetic basis, not an economic basis. So just.
And I respect that. I understand that. And that's partly why we designed the building in the way that we did to sort of, and I also, you know, the historic district is diverse, right? And it's a large district, and there's a lot of different size and scale of buildings represented within the district, some new, some old. So I guess I would argue that because of, and I know you try to apply similar standards throughout the district, I understand that, but if there's going to be an opportunity to sort of go higher within the district, I would argue that this is the place to do that because of the scale of the buildings nearby. That whether they're in the district or not.
Not to challenge you, but there isn't a developer in the world that isn't going to say that their particular property is the one on which.
Well, I respect that, but you can look, there are very clearly 6-story buildings. There's a building, like one building away, 150, whatever that distance is that the old Loopers is, that's 55 feet tall. I mean, it's a fact. And like, I'm not misrepresenting that, right? So there's a 6-story building a block down the road. It's a fact. So I'm not misrepresenting that. So I'm sure that, so, and you know, I think there's a scale between the width of, you know, the urban planning wise, the width of the street relative to the height of the buildings. And again, the width of 3rd Street relative to the height, I believe that this is appropriate in that sense too. So there's a 13-story building 2 blocks down the road, the former Bethlehem Steel headquarters. So I have heard often, you know, and I'm sometimes shocked by this, is that you know, 5, 10 flats, again, outside the district, but a block down the road, new construction, has been called out repeatedly as sort of, but that's an appropriate scale. That makes sense. We should do more buildings like that one. So that's a 5-story building. So this is a 5-story building. So I would argue that there are opportunities within the conservation district to go larger. And given where this building is located within the district and adjacent buildings outside the district, this makes sense. I'm not saying you have to feel that way. That's what I'm suggesting.
The point of this is a discussion, not,
sure.
You know, we're not calling out one another on this. Well,
Any other thoughts or comments on height or scale with this project from our commission members?
One more thing. I think the one picture you showed, an aerial view, I think the footprint of the building kind of matches the other footprints of the other buildings in the immediate area. I think you're kind of accurate. I think the charter art school actually appeared to be a little bit bigger, and in length, maybe even bulk, and obviously the factory is longer. The height is 5 stories. I think. I mean, I don't think the height's necessarily an issue. I think maybe some of the approaches that we've tried on other projects in the historic district may benefit you a little bit here, and that's like stepping the top floor back a little bit, so it's just not, oh, that's, you know what I mean? You don't get that street kind of sheer where it's straight up. Maybe if you step the top floor back a couple of feet, like what's proposed on the other project down the opposite end of 3rd Street from you guys, and they stepped it back and it kind of took off that big massive appearance from the street scape. But that being said, I mean, like the size, scale, and proportions do, I think, you know, I think they do fit in there. I think, you know, some architectural design has to be reworked on the 5th floor. You know what I mean? Like I said, just to try and taper it back a little bit. But I think, you know, especially with the footprint, I think the footprint fits right in that area there.
Mm-hmm. Well, We have a wonderful problem here, as you know, John, that, we're seeing a lot of great development projects, and they're really pushing the boundaries on height and scale on us. We recently had a building that came before us as a 12-story, dropped the floor each time, and it was a very contentious project for us to review, and I felt that that was a place along New Street where, because across the street we had another building that, also controversial for its height and scale. My personal feeling was that, the proposed new building across the street was getting somewhere in the range that I think because of different factors, because it was at a much lower elevation, the street was going uphill, and the building height increased up the hill. The applicant presented before us a streetscape, and it was starting to look like the proposed building, even though much taller than everything else than other buildings in the district. I thought it was starting to look more like it fit in scale wise. I've also been part of the conversations regarding some of the new height considerations for the district, and looking at specific places where increased height might make sense, and trying to rationalize, well, zoning's 150 feet, obviously that doesn't make sense for our district. 80 or 90 feet in certain places might make sense. To me, in looking at this project, I just see, it's clear that everything around it is 3 stories, everything around it, understood. If you go a couple of blocks down, you're starting to see new buildings that are 5 stories, and it's outside of our district. I feel that this is one of those places where, because of what's across the street and what's next to it, I think 3 stories is appropriate. But having said that, the mansard is something worth studying. Maybe the setback would help. I think certainly making it read more like a mansard would help, as I mentioned before. I'd like to talk about a couple of other things in addition to the height and scale, if I may. These maybe are things we could talk about in later meetings. I am wondering about the base of the building. I'm not sure brick is appropriate all the way down to the sidewalk level. Maybe you should look at some of our other buildings in the district and consider, look at some of the base materials that we use. I don't know if a cast stone panel might be more appropriate for a building like this. I mean, there's many different options. I'm also not sure, even though it's very striking, the corner building with the white cast stone, I'm concerned that it's just too much of a brilliant white, and is also not like anything else we have here in our district. Again, it's very striking, but maybe it needs to be toned down to more of a buff color. And again, I agree with Jeffrey's comments that I think the windows need some further study, both in terms of proportion and how they're divided. The only other thing I'd like to throw in here, and it's not at all part of our purview, but as an architect and a resident of Bethlehem, and it's becoming such a critical issue for new construction that I'm hoping we could hear more about how new construction buildings like this are addressing sustainability and climate change. And certainly I think if there's some approaches that you're using towards that, I think that might also help the commission and look at this more favorably, even though it's not really something that we consider in the project. I think it's just should be on the table, and it's important.
Yes, I can relate to that. So one of the interesting thing in this building, this is a building that they were not using a concrete podium. the whole building, the 5 stories are actually on wood construction, which is a renewable material. And this is why I'm having some of the issues when how you support the framing. So that's a good way to do it. A lot of the materials that we're using are sustainable materials. They are local when the radius of the area. A lot of the materials come from New Jersey or Baltimore area, which is the mensuring. We do have on the flat roof, we do have align insulations on the exterior wall. We are above for the energy code for the amount of insulation that we have on the roof. Also, we have insulation on the walls. We have insulation on the exterior as well too. Our windows now are insulated window, double pane. When come to mechanical systems, the HVAC units is when the space. Sometimes when you put your mechanical units on the roof, you have to bring more running piping or refrigerant throughout the building. So we're minimize the use of refrigerant throughout the building because the units are there. Also, our toilets, the flush they consume less water. We have LED lightings on all the corridors, open spaces. What else?
Well, just in terms of the fact that this is an urban infill project and it's a parking lot right now, I mean, we will reduce the amount of impervious on the site. So from a stormwater perspective, that's a positive from an environmental sustainability standpoint. It's on Atlanta bus line, so it promotes better sort of intermodal transportation from that standpoint. And you know, it's always a bit of a challenge, but denser development is typically more sustainable development when it's done in urban cores along bus routes. I mean, so it's the only way we're going to curb suburban sprawl and sort of like there's already water lines here, there's already sewer lines here, there's already gas lines here, there's road here. So we're putting a building where the infrastructure exists today. And so versus a piece of, you know, greenfield space, whether that be in Bethlehem or another part of the Bethlehem, but to take 44 units and put them on a lot of this size, as the valley continues to grow, as Bethlehem continues to grow, these are the kind of developments that are actually sustainable because you're going vertical and you're using less ground to house more people. So I would argue that just the location and at some point it sort of argues to going higher because you're not taking up more ground in order to do that. I know we have other restraints and constraints involved, and I appreciate those and I respect them. So, but you know, that's sometimes sustainability. Some of these issues can sometimes run in conflict in some ways with some of these other guidelines. So
Sure.
it's about trying to strike the right balance.
There are provisions within this building, perhaps to have like, say, bicycle storage or?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned all of our buildings. There is a bike storage in there. There's all of our buildings have bike storage, indoor bike storage, and they are very popular.
Especially with the advent of e-bikes and so on. And
Absolutely.
so there's a propensity for people to be doing more commuting other than automobiles.
100%. And the proximity to the greenway is also helpful.
Correct. Another thing that we look in our project is a project like that. If you look inside the building, we are a minimum of amenities because we want the city of Bethlehem be the amenities of the residents. So we are encouraging people to walk and go to places.
And we're also taking advantage of the new parking infrastructure that's going to be put in place. So of the sort of 500 contract parking spaces that are dedicated to that lot now, 300 or so are NCC. So those folks are there in the daytime and not usually there in the evening. Our folks are there in the evening and not usually there in the daytime. So there's a replication. You're sort of using that space twice in essence because there's some shared parking that just happens with the natural kind of rhythm of a residential use relative to an office use. So to the extent that you're not building additional infrastructure to accommodate this particular project. So I think some of those things sort of are inherent in the project, but I think are good to be mentioned.
Gary, what is our mission here tonight?
Well, and thank you for asking, because I see it's 8:30, and I did state in the beginning that new projects get a 45-minute timeline. And I really think the commission, to help John and Carlos move forward, I think we were really tasked by Jeffrey for talking about two things, height and scale, and I think what the architectural components. So, to me, I think the main thing is we should really have a motion on height and scale to move this forward. So does anybody feel that they're able to put that motion on the table for us? Seth, you've been awfully quiet tonight. It's unlike you. Okay. Okay.
I guess I'll make a motion to accept this project as designed for, as it's set forth in size, scale, and proportion. That being said, second part of that would be all architectural components, including floor layouts and the 5th floor and the roof terraces, be discussed at a later date as we move further along in the project. One motion, two parts to it.
Okay. Second. All right. And any further discussion on the motion? Okay, well, we'll take it to a vote. Seth Cornish.
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote nay. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
Ken Lausch.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
All right, well, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with the board going forward.
Want to call the general meeting? Like yell it out here?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I neglected one thing, and I really should have done this. I could still do it now, but I should have really asked if there was anyone in the public who wished to make comment, and and I noticed too, it didn't seem like there was anyone else tuned in tonight. It's probably because it's just out of our regular schedule too.
I would say though, if you don't mind, for me anyway, what's that? Well, I don't care if it's on the record or not, but there was a motion. Is there follow-up then for the applicants so that when they come back here that they're responding? Or is that in your motion? I really.
My motion
So
was,
that there's some clear direction as.
I guess my motion was for the size of the building itself, so that they could proceed with the design aspect of it. But any design, including exterior, would have to come back to the final approval.
Well, and I think then sometimes Jeff's minutes will outline some of the comments.
Which, if you want to break that down, there's some of the comments that Gary and everyone has brought up were a rediscussion of the roof or the 5th floor, as we see it, the brilliant white stone color on that left southwest corner of the building, and then the floor layouts, which would include the stairs and the window arrangements and stuff that we've been discussing now, the last couple of times we've done. So with those three design elements in the forefront of our discussions. That we were talking about, the base of the walls.
Yeah, and I think much of it Jeffrey had talked about too. So, as long as it's clear to Carlos and John.
Right, yeah, it is clear to us.
Okay.
No, I appreciate you wanting to clarify that. So I'll just say it. So windows
toning down sort of the white building a bit, the water table and what materials we used there. We talked about sustainability. Have we covered that, you think, to enough of an extent?
I think because we're gonna get comm checks and stuff when the
Sure.
design gets to that point anyway, so I think
Okay.
you made your points on that.
And then the mansard roof and the setback
Yes.
of that fits.
The roof detailing for
Yeah,
the fifth level.
Okay.
Yeah, the certificate will mention the dimensions that's presented. So it's going to be whatever width I cited, depth, height, 5 floors, but with details associated with materials, floor plans, et cetera, to be discussed at a later. I'm not getting into white versus all that. We can't have that much detail at the first place.
completely understand.
Okay. And then the issue that Jeffrey mentioned in regard to the stair tower in relation to the windows.
Yeah, I think one of those two approaches Jeffrey mentioned is worth exploring. Whether you decide to incorporate windows into a unit or maybe just express the windows a little differently because it's part of stairs.
Well, I think, yeah, well, our hope was, because if you do that with the stair tower, then that becomes very narrow and that doesn't look like a building anymore from outside. So you sort of lose a little bit of that townhouse rhythm that we were trying to achieve. So we're frankly trying to bury the stairs so you don't see them, because if you see the stairs, then it doesn't look like it loses that feel of 4 buildings. Now maybe there's another way to do it that we don't understand yet, but that's why we're not trying to call them out. I think that if I'm correct, Carlos, based on the comment that we had when we met with Jeffrey and Darlene initially, but prior to, sort of a sit down before we came to you this evening, I think we've set those stairs back, correct?
Yeah, so what we did was we set the stair back, and you still see the windows in different level, but the stair is gonna set back, so you get a feeling of you are like an atrium. As you go up, you are away from the window. So we move the stair back, let's say 4 feet away. So when you are on the ground floor, you can look all the way up open. On every landing, you are away from the window. Before our stair was.
But you're not likely to see the stairs from outside the building as a result of that. So it's been set, the stairs have been set back.
If I may, that from that perspective, then what you have is a row house that will have, because code requires the stair hall to be lit after dark. You're going to have a vertical row of lights up the building that traditionally would be individual apartment units. So I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying it's a very different aesthetic.
Yeah, personally, I think expressing the windows differently wouldn't hurt the the concept of row houses, but again, you're the architect, it's your challenge.
Okay. But we'll keep looking at it.
Yeah, I think it could even help split it up a little bit now that I'm looking at it.
There is always a solution on every issue, so we can look at it.
Well, thank you again for bringing this
Oh,
before us
thank you all.
tonight.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jeff.
So it looks like we don't have John Lee. It doesn't look like John Lee ever made it. So I guess we've finished our main part of the evening tonight. Did we have do we have minutes to approve?
Yes, I sent them out twice.
Okay, my apologies. I
No, it's
missed
okay.
it.
Just it would be nice if anybody had any comment. I appreciate, because we didn't have a June meeting. So, excuse me, July. So these are from June. And then last meeting was postponed because of no quorum. So I realize it's been a while. But for the city's purposes, we'd really appreciate approval of the June minutes because it is end of August.
Yeah, did anybody else have a chance to review the minutes and is
I
feeling?
looked at them before, but it was a while ago, so.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't see anything then that I recall, so.
okay.
I would move that we approve the minutes
Okay.
as submitted.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. And then Craig, you mentioned some new business, such as we talked about what the Broadhead Road. There's it's the building next to the old Mike's Oil Glass. Is that it? And,
Yeah, Really, Mike is taking care of that.
Okay.
I'm gonna get back to him.
Great, and then, the ongoing problem at the
Trash
Dunkin'
corral at
Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, that sounds like it's in progress too, right?
Yes.
The only other thing I had asked about, I know that's still sitting out there is, is that woman who came before us a number of times throughout the years. It's the corner property, I think on 4th Street. It's got this turret on the corner.
Yeah.
She came before us to try and do something in the back. And,
In 401, 403, 405 East 4th Street.
yeah, and I think last you said the property is,
So that property, just to give you a quick update,
okay,
that property is going through the blight process.
Right,
Okay, and
okay.
I think the RDA is at a point where the RDA's attorney is dealing with her attorney, and they're working towards settlement, I believe.
Okay, and does settlement mean?
Settlement would mean that the RDA would then at some point take possession of the property and then can market the property and to a valid, they have what they call a certified developer.
Okay,
So somebody who would take an active approach on it.
okay. It's hard to understand how situations like that happen.
Yeah, well, it's been vacant for quite some time now.
Yeah,
And properties when they're vacant don't get better.
no, certainly not. But, anyway, another, yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's not for the record. And correct me if I'm wrong, Darlene, beginning in September, all the meetings are in person, so we will no longer have
Oh,
the virtual component. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did want to talk about that before you
okay.
wrapped up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to preempt.
No, I was gonna bring it up in new business, so I guess to follow up with Jeffrey, September 1st,
Mhm.
the mayor has instituted all meetings to be in person.
Okay.
So unless you have an extenuating circumstance, I'm not saying that they can't, you know what I mean? Like, but the majority of the meetings take place here, like they have traditionally for years.
I think it's still very helpful to have those things projected on the screen.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how we're gonna do that because we're not gonna have, tech support anymore. Kelly had been coming and we're not gonna have an additional person coming. So I'm not sure how we'll be able to do that. We're not gonna set laptops up here, stuff like that. Screen, but then, some of you are really in the worst positions to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, just,
But we can do that. Rooms got, easily set up. Virtually. So if there are situations where someone needs to log in virtually for some reason, you can do that. We're not gonna make that available to the public or to the applicants anymore.
okay.
But if you need it, we're trying to get down to.
I have one more thing on the new business is that, so I've been working with Phil Rader and some of the other admin staff from City Hall, and we're trying to put together some, I guess, pre-approved or what we would consider administrative approvals. So Phil's putting some packets together, and before I introduce that to everybody here, I obviously, I'm not going to finalize anything, and I'll take it to the board. We could all weigh in on it, and I'll get you, everyone, a copy of it prior to our meeting so you can do it and stuff. But I just didn't know if it would, I guess I'm kind of under the understanding, and I'm sure much of you feel the same, that some stuff, not necessarily some of the stuff that came to us tonight, but some of the stuff that comes to us probably not have to come to us, and we could probably just do it in our office if we have a set determination on materials to use, scope, and especially re-roofs and similar things like that. That not that I'm saying it's wasting anyone's time, but it's stuff that could be handled on the front end that we're more than capable. But like I said, I'm working with Phil. I'll get the outline, the guidance that we're proposing, and then we'll have subsequent meetings. I won't do anything ahead of everybody being on board.
I'm trying to remember too, when talking about that, and you know, I think sure everyone welcomes streamlining some of these things.
Yeah.
But I know part of the discussion was these projects would still get a certificate of appropriateness, but then does it become part of the meeting at least to review with the commission what items were, what decisions were made and what came before?
There's some of the finer details that we're working
Okay.
through now. So right now, we're just doing the heavy lifting, which is actually determining what materials, what scopes and stuff like that. That's gonna have to happen at the tail end, and they're all great questions that I don't know the answers to them
Right.
yet. I mean, so that's the exact question was, do we need to see, does it need to go in front of council if we do an administrative approval and stuff? And we don't know that yet. So we'll get an answer on that though.
Okay. Darlene, a question for you too, and I was kind of wondering, you know, with the talk of, you know, updating height guidelines, I know the city hired a consultant on that. There was a study done. There were talks. Where's that at?
Well, in all honesty, I'll sit in front of the mic. In all honesty, we weren't sure what to do with it because it seemed like people were either way on one side of the discussion or way on the other side, but there were few people that were in the middle.
Oh,
And then we had further discussions with some city council members, and they were interested in doing something rather than just letting things stand the way that they are. So we're just starting to draft some things that would show what would the ordinance changes look like if we would move ahead with these recommendations. So we haven't moved very far with it, honestly. I don't know how quickly it would move because, you know, there's a lot of interest in it, and it didn't seem like there was a significant amount of consensus.
oh, okay.
So we are working on it. I think because rather than do nothing and keep things as they are, really it puts the burden on HCC and council to basically renegotiate everything every single time it comes in.
Right.
And if we can be more clear up front about what is acceptable and provide some limits, we felt that that would be better for the people that are bringing projects in and also better for the people that are reviewing the projects. So,
Sure.
so yeah, we're starting to get back on track with doing something, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right. That sounds like
what
enough
that'll
of
look like.
an update.
So it's not much of an answer, really. It's like a long, I don't know.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I want to ask about under our new business items is we did talk a little bit about some upcoming training opportunities, and you know, please remind me the dates and what's in store.
I think that it is.
October 5th and 7th, I believe.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I think it's the first week in October.
Oh.
And it's a little unfortunate for the Harb members because their meeting is the Wednesday in between those two training sessions, so it'll be a long week for them. But we sort of mirrored it after something that we did probably 5 or 6 years ago. We held the session on the south side over at NCC, and we invited Allentown and Easton to also come. And then we had trainers come in from out of the area, and they, you know, we had sent them questions and topics in advance. And they specifically tried to address some of those things, to go over some fundamentals, but also address some of those things. So what we're laying out for them this time is, again, to go over some fundamentals. But I think Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton were each experiencing the same thing. Like, what do you do with these big projects? What do you do with demolitions? What should we be doing in a preemptive way? And what are the like the most important priorities that we should be looking at when we review these projects? So, you know, I think it'll be a good session. I really do. We work with it's a camp, which I don't even remember what it stands for, but it's an acronym for something. But we tell them what our concerns are, and then they look for some experts basically throughout the United States to come and help us talk about these things. Unfortunately, it has to be virtual. I think
Okay.
there's something said to, meeting and talking with people, especially when you're talking to commission members from other communities. Sometimes it's good to share notes and stuff, but I think it'll be a really good session.
Was there an email to register for it that already went out?
Oh, you don't have to register.
Okay.
They're doing it just for us. So,
Make sure you get the.
yeah, there'll be, and I can resend the schedule if you want, but there'll be login information and stuff like that we'll send out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's 2 different sessions, right?
It's 2 different sessions. I think the last time that we did it, I don't know if we did it a weekday or a Saturday, but we did it all day. We broke for lunch and we did it all day. And we just can't do that virtually. It's just too much. So it's like 2 hours, it's like 2, 3.5 or 4 hour sessions, something like that. So. Here's another thing I'll throw out. Mike's also been working on revising the ordinance to charge fees for submissions. Did you talk about that before?
No, I haven't. I'm reading.
And that especially for some of these larger projects, they're not paying anything for all this review.
Right.
They're not paying for staff time or your time or the expense of setting up the meetings. They're not paying for anything. So he is working on creating fees, a fee schedule. We don't want to charge a lot for the smaller
It'd be a
projects.
Scale based on your project.
Yeah.
And what it
Like
allows.
building permits.
What's that?
It's like building permits.
Yes.
It's just like building permits.
Yes.
I mean, if you really boil it down, we have some very good professionals and very good input on this board, and it's almost like they get free consultations when they come, and that's why
We have noticed that.
and that's why you see some of these people coming back several times. And it's not that we're trying to prevent them from coming back, but then it allows us to then maybe bring on a historic inspector full-time who could follow up on these projects and look for these specific items as these projects progress and stuff like that to make sure that what we're saying is being done, or if we do administrative approvals, that they're actually using the materials that we're telling them they have to. So
Yeah, definitely.
it allows us to, it gives us a backstop to say, hey, you want to come here 10 times, you're gonna pay for it, you know what I mean? So.
Oh, he's been busy.
Well, thank you, everyone. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
Move
but
to adjourn.
Thank you. So moved.
Second.
To John Lee, I kept checking my emails to see if he was running late or something, but
Oh,
so
you
fortunate.
get to leave at 9 instead of 10.
10:30. 45 minutes a pop.
It just means we might have another long agenda next time.